Less than 2 weeks ago, Omar Mateen walked inside Pulse nightclub located in downtown Orlando, killing 49 people and wounding many more before killed by local law enforcement. He was allegedly acting alone and pulled this off with a semi-automatic rifle and a handgun that he had legally obtained months prior to the incident. This traumatic event is the latest chapter in the recent trends of mass shootings and localized terrorist attacks plaguing our nation. Majority of these attacks have been carried out using AR-15 style semi-automatic rifles, which naturally led to the backlash on this style of weapon and the outcry for stricter gun laws and more restrictions on all types of firearms. Anti-gun lobbyists and liberals are using these events as focal points in their center their anti-gun campaign. The individuals are using inflated data, scare tactics, and manipulation of the media to try and convince that guns should be banned and our Second Amendment rights should be stifled. They have even gone as far as blatantly lying and making up their own data regarding firearms and mass shootings in hopes of curbing people's opinions on their anti-gun favor. This is not only unethical, but also an attack on our Second Amendment rights. Under the Constitution of the United States, and more specifically the Second Amendment, we as a free people have a right to keep and bear arms, and the right shall not be infringed. Anti-gun supporters will claim that the Constitution is outdated. They will claim that the Second Amendment is no longer relevant to our times, and that the Second Amendment does not cover high-powered, semi-automatic weapons of doom. They are convinced that the Second Amendment only allows us to carry muskets, because that was the standard during the period of time that the Constitution was written. And if our forefathers knew the direction of firearm technology was headed, then they would have worded the Second Amendment a different way. The line of thought is completely laughable and almost hard to believe. If they carry the same views of every amendment, then doesn't that mean that our freedom of speech would only cover assemblies and speeches and papers? Then those were the standards of the information during that period, which would exclude the freedom of speech from the current outlets that we use today, such as television, radio, and the internet. It's a pitiful attempt to try once again to disarm our citizens. The bottom line is that anti-gun liberals will say and do anything to disarm American citizens, even in the overwhelming amount of evidence that is shown that armed, law-abiding citizens have prevented more crime than committed by criminals with illegally obtained firearms. More lives have been saved in dangerous situations by armed citizens than local police departments. And that's not a negative reflection on law enforcement officers. It just merely shows that due to the abrupt, unpredictable nature of violent acts, armed citizens can diffuse these events quicker than local police can even show up at the scene. If you look at the statistics and compare the data on a global level, you'll see that countries with the strictest laws have the highest amount of firearm-related crimes. That's due to the fact that criminals will always find a way to obtain an illegal firearm, no matter how many laws are passed. Stricter gun laws banning firearms will spell doom for America. These laws are designed to unarm law-abiding citizens and take away our first line of protection. Generally speaking, a well-abled, middle-aged man could defend himself if confronted on a street by someone willing to do him harm. But could a 115-pound woman with zero training do the same? Or how about an elderly couple who are dependent on walkers to move around in their home? Would these citizens be able to fight off an attacker breaking into their home utilizing just their bare hands? The firearm is a defensive tool that can be used in these scenarios to protect the lives of those citizens. The gun is nothing more than a tool, like a hammer or a wrench. It's not evil and it's not scary. If you have a bolt that needs tightening, then you would use a socket wrench. If you have a nail that needs to be driven through wood, then you would use a hammer. And if you have a threat that's trying to kill you or your loved ones that you need to protect with their lives, and you would use a firearm. In conclusion, I'm proposing that not only are firearms a vital resource in protecting ourselves and our country, but an ownership is a right bestowed upon us as American citizens under the Constitution of the United States. This is a right that will not be infringed. Americans will continue to uphold and execute this right, and if necessary, protect the citizens of this country from a government that may try and strip us of our rights, liberties, and freedoms. In other words, do not tread on me.